Today I want to talk about morality, tragedy, and the way that we respond to death. My name is Walker and this is Tradition and Truth. I discuss things about theology, philosophy, morality, and rarely ever politics. I just don't get into politics. But unfortunately, when you have a stance on morality, you tend to have to take a stance on politics, especially when certain events happen. So this video is not necessarily about politics as much as it's about my response to the morality of the situation regarding Charlie Kirk and the societal response regarding his death. This is mostly aimed towards the societal response of those who have negatively expressed their opinions against Charlie Kirk in his death, to include celebrating his death. One thing about Charlie that I'm going to reflect on really quickly. Charlie was very big on data and statistics. When he quoted things, if he had beliefs and opinions about things, he backed it up with science and data. And, he had his religious beliefs that he backed up pretty heavily, but beyond that, he used reason. Now, in theology, or morality, one of the things that we need to understand, or theology, is that natural theology is reason without faith. Natural theology is coming to the conclusion based on your reason alone that something is the way it is. And I can come to that with some simple things like the grass is green. That's my natural theology on the grass. However, with moral theology, that's backed by faith. And so you have faith with reason. Faith does not discard reason. Reason is necessary for faith to also be there. So you have reason and faith to ensure the whole picture, and you get the fullness of the image that way. So when you have moral theology, especially from a Christian sense, you tend to believe certain ways politically. Charlie Kirk was very prominent on his beliefs. He openly engaged in open discussion with people, especially those who disagreed with him. And for that, I have the utmost respect for Charlie. I think that he was a wonderful human being, and he did not deserve what happened to him. No one deserves that. That being said, I really appreciate the fact that even when someone disagreed with him and they couldn't come to a conclusion together, he was still respectful in tone and caring about the individual itself. There's plenty of clips out there to talk about. One is he was engaged in a conversation with a porn star who asked if she had father issues, and everyone else kind of laughed and joked about it. That was there, all the guys, whatever. But Charlie looked genuinely sad when she said that she had no communication with her father. And that was the kind of human being that Charlie Kirk was. He had his beliefs, he engaged in conversation, but above all, he cared. And he cared so much that he wanted to help other people. And by helping other people, he wanted to educate other people. And that is an unfortunate reality in our society, is there's a lot of people with belief systems that are emotionally charged through what they perceive as reason alone, but reason alone can be flawed because it's your reasoning. It's not the human authority reasoning, it's not the faith reasoning, it's your reasoning. And then it's backed by other people who had that same opinion, but there's no outside source to really kind of influence that. And that's where we have this jacked up moral compass that plays into politics. So Charlie Kirk wanted to help people with that, and I believe that wholeheartedly. Let's dive in. To understand the morality behind this situation, we first must look at the individual life. Much like Charlie Kirk, I believe in data, statistics, and always ensuring my work is quoted and read correctly. So I'm going to read from some notes I've taken here to help this video out. Scripture tells us in Genesis 1:27 that every human being is made in the image and likeness of God. That truth alone demands reverence for life, even when we disagree with a person's words or actions. Philosophically, we can say that this is the principle of intrinsic dignity. Thinkers from Aristotle to Kant recognize that morality means treating people not merely as a means to our ends, but as ends in themselves. In Christianity, this is even stronger. Every person is beloved of God, redeemed by Christ, and has eternal worth. And that eternal worth is within Christ. I actually looked at some gospel morality recently on the concept of the love of Christ and the fulfillment of the Decalogue, which is the Ten Commandments. And then Christ is the fulfillment of that covenant within love. And there's a little bit more that goes into it, but that's kind of where we're getting at here. The individual, you, me, has intrinsic worth. People often want to look at an individual who commits a certain crime and rule them as pure evil. And I'm going to say something really unpopular here that I think a lot of people will disagree with. And I'm not advocating for this individual, but it is purely as an eye-opener, a way to look at things. People want to label Adolf Hitler as evil. Was Adolf Hitler evil? No, humans are not evil, but their actions are. What Adolf Hitler did was awful. The Holocaust, concentration camps, so forth, it's an awful, horrible thing that happened. But did he believe that he was truly evil when he committed these acts? I highly doubt it. I bet that he had opinions formed based off his own natural reasoning that he brought forth and said, hey, this is correct because of this. And he had no sort of faith morality to influence his decisions that says, oh, this is inherently bad. That's what happens when you have natural theology versus moral theology. You get where I'm going at here. Moral traditions tell us to be very careful about labeling someone as pure evil. St. Thomas Aquinas defined this best. He said, evil is not a substance, but it is a privation, which is a lack of good. Human choices are shaped by a chain of causes, environments, and influences. But here's the paradox. Causality does not cancel free will. I'll say that again. Causality does not cancel free will. Just because you were raised by a certain set of circumstances does not mean that you will enact on something else. I was raised by a father who abused substances. They were prescribed to him, but he fell into that trap of the coal miner and the pain pill, right? Like that's what happened. And it's unfortunate. I, being around that my entire life growing up, chose not to go into the life of drugs. However, many people that were in the same situation as me have continued that tradition and they now are on drugs. So again, causality does not cancel out free will. TLDR, we're not helpless dominoes. We're not just going to fall because every other domino behind us fell. We have the ability to stay standing. Every individual still bears responsibility for their choices. This is why Christianity can both recognize the complexity of why evil happens and still hold people morally accountable. So we understand it. We understand that sin plays a role in our life. The sin is usually a snowball effect that starts with something very small, progresses, builds up, gets bigger, 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 and eventually you find yourself on a rooftop shooting somebody. I've never personally found myself in that situation, but the understanding of causality can tell me why someone would eventually let hatred rule their heart so much that they would do something like that. Now let's look at the Christian response to death. In John 11:35, we read the shortest verse in Scripture. Jesus wept. He did not rejoice in the death of Lazarus, even knowing he would raise him. That should teach us how to respond, with sorrow, compassion, and prayer. Jesus wept. So when someone dies, whether friend, enemy, stranger, it doesn't matter. Our first moral obligation is to pray for their soul, to pray for their family, and to even pray for those who commit acts of violence. I say that because it is very easy for us to label someone as evil and just dehumanize them. And that's exactly what Charlie Kirk was all about when he talked about just open discourse or open dialogue with someone. When people stop communicating, they dehumanize each other and then violence ensues. Charlie Kirk wanted the opposite. And I'm fairly certain that if Charlie Kirk was here right now, he would still want us to pray for the individual that shot him, that did this horrible, evil act. And the reason why is because that's what Jesus would want. Jesus loves. We're all children of God. And when we look at these situations, we have to understand that if it was Tyler Robinson, he acted alone. I don't know. I have the evidence. I'm not the cops. I'm not the justice system. But what I will say is that if it was this individual, they say it is. And if it wasn't, then whoever it may be, in their heart, they still have the ability to be saved. Salvation is for every human being on this earth. We need to be quick to stop casting judgment. We're already quick to cast judgment. As a society, we've already failed in the fact that every time something happens, we want to cast judgment. We want to be quick with our tongues and slow with our minds and hearts. And that's exactly the opposite of what we should do. We need to stop, reflect, and remember two things. God first, God last. Pray to God. And then pray to Him again. As a society, we have traded moral seriousness for political score pointing. Scapegoating. That's exactly what it is. When you are online posting that you should be sad about that event that happened, this event, and this event, and you're asking, why didn't you share this, and this, but you're sharing about Charlie Kirk? It's not about that. And you know that when you share it, you're simply trying to take away from someone's death because you politically did not align with them. And to you, this is a political event. There's a lot of people who don't care that Charlie Kirk's gone, and you have that right. You have that opinion. I ask that you look in your heart to find out where the hardness is, if you feel that way, but you do have that opinion. You have that right, and I won't argue that. I'm not the kind of person that thinks that you should be fired from your job for having freedom of speech. I actually believe the opposite. I think that if you truly believe that he deserved it, feel free to express it. I will tell you that that's going to tell me what kind of person I should be around and should not be around, and if you are one of those people, I'm going to pray for you and offer you the love of Christ, but I'm going to not be your best friend, that's for sure. That being said, I think that when we look at the post of people who are, looking at, why are you not sharing about the school shooting that happened the same day of Charlie Kirk? Why are you not sharing about this? Why is the president not talking about this? You're making it about politics because you are upset that Charlie Kirk disagreed with your political ideologies. It's not about Charlie Kirk. It's about your political agenda, and you're making it about yourself, which is an ego thing. It's fully about pride. It's a horrible thing. And when we look at morality from a theological standpoint, pride will get in the way of your morality every single time because it puts you first. And when we look at morality, we should always put other people first to understand the betterment of the whole situation. Christ first. Before I wrap up that segment, I just want to say, I truly pray that whoever it was, Tyler Robson or whoever, that they find Jesus Christ. I pray that they are saved by the salvation of grace that's given to each one of us. And I pray that they know Jesus stronger than I'll ever know him. I pray that when that person dies, that they're greeted with Charlie Kirk and they get to talk it out and say, hey, I forgive you. But above all, God forgave you. And that's what really matters right here. Because I know that's exactly what God would want. I know that's what Charlie Kirk would want. So let's talk about the morality of rejoicing someone's death. We're going to dive a little deeper into that. When people celebrate Charlie Kirk's death online, it reveals something dark about our culture. As I stated before, we've confused justice with vengeance. We've traded moral seriousness for political point scoring. But let us remember what Christ taught. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. That's Matthew 5:44. That command is not optional. It is at the heart of Christian morality. I want to say that again. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Celebrating death hardens our hearts, dehumanizing others, and corrupts our very own soul. When you do that, when you harden your heart and you corrupt your soul, you are inviting sin into your life and you're accepting it under the idea of natural theology. Not to say natural theology is bad. I'm not trying to say that with this video, but what I'm saying is it is an open door to really horrible things because you yourself are not capable of true discernment of what is right versus wrong. And we'll cover that more in a different video, but if you're interested in it, I just highly encourage you kind of to brush up on natural versus moral theology. Morality beyond politics. Philosophers often ask, what is the good life? Aristotle, even though I'm not a huge fan of Aristotle, he did have some good work, and obviously he was the student of he was a student of one of the greatest philosophers, but two, technically, if you look at the order of things. Anyways, Aristotle said it is the pursuit of virtue. St. Augustine said it was resting in God. In our polarized world, we need both, a commitment to truth and a recognition that ultimate peace comes only from God. This tragedy is not about left or right. It's not about conservative or liberal. It is about good and evil, life and death, dignity and degradation. The moral response is not to gloat, not to politicize, but to mourn and pray. So today, let us honor Charlie Kirk's life by rejecting the temptation to dehumanize this event, to dehumanize those who disagree with us, whether they celebrate or don't celebrate or whatever. Our goal is not to dehumanize these individuals. They're not some lunatic left or right-wing individuals. Just because they have pink hair and want to be a different gender, they're not lunatics. They're suffering. I want us to pray for the family, both families. The family that lost their child, their father, their husband. We need to pray for Charlie Kirk's family. But we need to pray for the suspect's family, Tyler Robinson or whoever it may be. And let us remember that morality is not about winning arguments, but about living in the truth and love of Christ. Because in the end, morality is not abstract. It is personal, and every death, even of someone we disagree with, is a call to remember the sacredness of life. I think that we as a society need a deep look into morality. I think we need to take our moral compass and we need to get it fine-tuned and checked a little bit. I think that we're relying way too much on reason alone and not faith. And it's a recipe for disaster. It's a horrible thing because you dehumanize and you don't understand the fullness of what you're doing, the snowball effect of the things that you accept because of reason, but later snowball into much worse situations. And like a somewhat theoretical suggestion of this, just for the video's sake, the idea of abortion, for example. Whether you believe in it or don't, the idea is that you are accepting the idea of dehumanizing what could potentially be human life, whether you believe it is or not. I'm taking a neutral stance for video's sake on this. I'm not going to get into politics. However, you should know what my stance is. That being said, when you start to dehumanize life and you find it socially acceptable to disregard conception and you remove a baby from its mother, now as a society we've accepted death at our own hands, and not from a judicial level, not from a justice level, but from a purely convenience level. I don't want to deal with the responsibility of this, so I'm just going to end it. And then we advance that to go further and say, the elderly are now a part of our society that is a nuisance. We don't want to deal with it. Maybe we get rid of the elderly that is not capable of taking care of themselves. And then that snowballs into the next one. Mentally disabled individuals who are unable to take care of themselves do not contribute to society, so we should eliminate them. And then eventually you dehumanize so many levels that it snowballs further and it says, hey, you don't contribute enough to society at all. We are going to eliminate you. This is pretty similar to like concentration camps and a repeat of a lot of history. And so when you start to look at these ideas and you think of morality and you think you're taking the moral high ground, you're probably not, because you don't realize that the moral theological aspect that we've been given a fullness of the truth to lets us see through a window that others don't really see through, because we understand the fullness of the truth, or we attempt to. And that's what really matters, is that we were given that fullness of the truth. And even if we don't fully understand it, we have to have the faith to know that it is what is right. And if you don't understand it, do some research and you'll quickly understand it. That's it. Thanks for watching, guys. My name's Walker. This is Tradition and Truth. I hope you guys have a great day. Stay blessed.